You're watching Public Affairs. Berkowitz is my name and politics is our game. And we're going to be doing lots of politics this evening because usually here's what I say we have as our guest. Well, we don't have a guest. We anticipated having one here on September 14th, but the great flood came. For people who are watching from the Chicago metro area, you know we had great floods this weekend and we were flooded out. Don Manzullo, Congressman Don Manzullo was supposed to be here from the 16th Congressional District, 16-year incumbent. He had to cancel once previously, pretty good excuse. The Republican delegation was called back into session. Remember that? That was a few weeks ago. And then today the floods. He was trying to get here, but he couldn't make it. We'll take him at his word. He will be here. His challenger, Robert Abood, was here previously. We hope to have, after we get Congressman Manzullo on, we hope to get him on the show with Bob Abood, and we'll see what they can do. And that ties in with something we want to talk about here today, which is a bit of congressional cowardice. Folks, incumbent congressmen often think they can avoid tough questions and probing questions and go on shows that do a little fluff, and you see a lot of that. But now we're seeing challengers also thinking they can do that. Well, what's going on here? What does Dan Seals in the 10th Congressional District have in common with Jim Oberweis in the 14th Congressional District? Those guys are both challengers and they're avoiding public affairs. Can you imagine that? I mean, Oberweis has been here at least before when he's running in the primary. Seals hasn't made an appearance at all, and we're right in his backyard. We tape in Skokie. It's shameful. So if you see ads or if you see emails asking you for solicitations for money from Dan Seals, I'd send him back and say, why don't you go on and take advantage of some earned media, namely Berkowitz's show on public affairs. I get requests. People are asking me, where's Dan Seals? Like I'm keeping him off. No, he's a challenger. Well, Mark Kirk's the incumbent. He hasn't been here in 5 years. We don't think much of that, but still he's the incumbent. When the challenger won't do it and he says he can't give money, he needs it for ads, and then he turns away a half an hour for media. Same thing with Jim Oberweis in the 14th. We're fair and balanced. Seals is a Democrat. Oberweis is a Republican. Where is he? He was here in the primary, but now he's saying, well, he doesn't think he can do it unless Bill Foster will be here. That's what Seals says. Why does he need the other guy here? Yeah, Bill Foster should be here. He's an incumbent. But we can't do anything about that. Mark Kirk should be here. So, you know, our Seals and Oberweis, what do they have in common? They both seem to be wussing out. I think that's the correct phrase. But look, if Seals were to show up here tomorrow and tell me he's going to do that, we'd give him a fair and balanced show. In fact, even a little bit more so because Kirk's not coming. Same thing with Jim Oberweis. If he shows up, we'll give him a fair and balanced show. Even more so because Bill Foster isn't coming. If Foster and Kirk come, well, even more so because then their challenges aren't coming. That's congressional cowardice in action. You're seeing the same thing in some of the other races where we've had the challengers here, but the incumbents won't show up. In the 13th, it's Scott Harper willing to face the tough questions. Where is the incumbent Judy Biggert, the Republican? She is the incumbent. Why isn't she coming on? We've asked her months ago. In the 8th Congressional District, you have the Republican challenger Steve Greenberg showing up. Where is Melissa Bean? She used to be critical when she was a challenger of Phil Crane for not showing up. She hasn't been here since 2006, January 2006. Imagine that. And that's in the 8th. In the 6th Congressional District, we've had Jill Morgenthaler show up. She's got the courage to do so, face tough questioning. She's the Democratic challenger. Peter Roskin won't even talk to us in a minute or two when we saw him at the Republican convention. What is Peter afraid of? I mean, if you're a congressman or a congresswoman and you're counting benefits in excess of $200,000, don't you owe the voters, potential voters, actual voters, whatever, the opportunity to see you facing tough questioning? I did a previous show on the Democratic and Republican Party conventions, and you saw a bunch of folks there, and we're going to bring you back. We didn't get to include all of them, so you're going to get to see even more from the Democratic and Republican Party conventions. We're fair and balanced. You'll see more of presidential candidate Barack Obama, more of presidential candidate John McCain, and then a bunch of supporters or people around there, Teddy Kennedy and so forth. So stay tuned for that. And quickly, what's that race about? I mean, when you think about it, it's Obama-Biden, it's McCain-Palin, but really what's the crux of that race? Everybody's hearing this on September 14th. The energy that's come to this campaign, it came from Sarah Palin. And the people, of course, say on the Democratic side, she's not experienced. She doesn't know national issues. Yes, she's been a mayor. Yes, she's been a governor. But when has she talked about national foreign policy issues? Well, she just started doing so, and we'll find out more about that. The Democrats are a little hesitant to push too much on that issue because they have in themselves a candidate, Barack Obama, who's been talking on this show starting in 2002 about foreign policy and domestic policy issues, national issues. But in terms of his experience, in terms of his actual interaction with foreign leaders, in terms of having a history, well, it pales in comparison, so to speak, with John McCain, that kind of a history. Much as we like Barack Obama, much as we like John McCain, that's a deficit he's got. McCain has perhaps an age, too much age, but he's got the experience. But you can see how Sarah Palin is throwing all of that into the mix because of her lack of experience, but her freshness. When you think about John McCain, sure, he's been around 2 careers, a quarter of a century in the military, quarter of a century in Congress, but then he picks Sarah Palin because he's got confidence in her as a maverick, as a reformer, which is what McCain is running on. Is that what America wants, that kind of reform? Or do they want that balance when the day is done between Obama and Biden? We discuss, you decide. We think you'll enjoy the show. Lots of surprises. Stay with us. And one thing we want to say, we very much want to thank our crew for coming here on a tough day with a lot of flooding going on. Certainly Jay Steinberg for directing this effort and being here when we needed him most here. And Bonnie Stoller and Emily Wright, who showed up here. And so we really, really thank those folks. We don't say that enough. Without that crew, this show wouldn't be possible and you wouldn't be able to see it. Enough. All right, Jay, let's roll that tape. One last thing just on Iraq, because you mentioned Iraq, and July 22nd, Wall Street Journal column that we talked about briefly before, Milton Friedman's interviewed there and mentions that he agrees with you that it was a mistake to go into Iraq. But he says once there, it's important that we succeed. And I know you said that before, that you can't just get out, even though you vigorously argued against getting in. But as of July 22nd, 2006, it is still the case that you think it's important that we succeed in Iraq.
Well, I think that it is important for us to stabilize Iraq. I think the measure of success should be that there is not an all-out civil war, that there is not terrorist bases inside Iraq, that there has not been a meltdown of Iraq that draws its borders, draws its neighbors into escalating conflict. That should be our criteria, and I think that can still be accomplished, although it is getting tougher and tougher because increasingly what we're seeing is sectarian warfare as opposed to insurgency as the primary source of instability.
All right, thank you so much, Senator Barack Obama.
All right.
Who else out here been mad at me? I ain't figured out yet. Trying to get to know Mayor Daley for 14 years. I only see Mayor Daley at the conventions, and I only talk to him through the press. I've been trying to get to know him, but that's what conventions are about. In other words, we don't have a lot of time to unite the Democratic Party. And that, Benito, which historically divides us, cannot divide us if we want Barack Obama to be President of the United States. I'm not going to be satisfied until I see Rod Blagojevich give Michael Madigan a hug. We're not going to be satisfied until we see that. To be President of the United States. Here's the political reality, and then I will let you go. Because Bobby Rush deluded me this morning. Here's the political reality. And here's the biggest kept secret in the Democratic Party, which is why Democrats still in Illinois have to get this message. All right? The Democratic Party nationally is too small. We can't win a national election. This is the truth of the Democratic Party. So we have to leave the convention united. And then, after we get past all the last 2 days of this mess that we go through in the Democratic Party, and we got to go through some mess. It's pain to McCain, Ms. Simon. Then we have to allow, this is hard, progressives, labor, environmentalist women, then we have to allow our Democratic nominee to reach out to independents, to build the party and make it wider. We have to allow our Democratic nominee to reach out to Obamacans, Republicans. And he's going to say some things over the next 3 months that, guess what? Some of us who are the faithful aren't going to like. But he knows what I know. The National Party is too small to win a national election. But we have to keep our focus on winning the national election. So he must start with a united Democratic Party. And then after the convention, reach out through policy positions, which we may not like, to independents and Republicans.
Are you 1,000% behind Barack Obama now?
You have to remember that I was the first candidate for president who indicated support for him. I did something no other candidate did. I told my supporters back in Iowa that on the second ballot that they should support Senator Obama. There's no one who was running for president who did anything like that. And so I'm glad to be here. I'll be speaking tomorrow on the economy. And I was asked to do that because where I come from in Cleveland, Ohio, Cleveland and cities like it are really experiencing some great economic turmoil. So I'm going to be talking about jobs, about health care, about retirement security, about wage levels, about workers' rights, about the environment, transition, and sustainability. Denver knows about that.
But you're talking about the economy now. In July at Soldier Field last year, you were saying both Clinton and Obama were voting to fund the Iraq War. You're very critical of them.
You know what? The voters made their choice in the primaries. I accept the democratic process, and I'm here to help pull it together. Thanks.
Thank you.
But at the end of the day, with skyrocketing costs of energy, of gas, of fuel, unemployment that is skyrocketing, foreclosure rates that are unseen, and people not having the incomes that they used to, that's becoming the #1 issue.
Take just one of them. Gas prices. Everybody focuses on that. $4 a gallon. They're coming down a bit. McCain says you've got to expand that offshore drilling. The polls say people in America are with them. Expand the offshore drilling. Barack says not so much.
Well,
Could that kind of issue hurt him?
Well, I think if you ask anybody, right, offshore drilling, even if you're for offshore drilling, you know, have the reserves for 3% of the world's oil production, and we use 25% of it. So no matter how much drilling you're going to do, it's not going to take care of the problem. And it's definitely short-term going to have zero impact. Even the Bush administration officials say that it won't be until 2030 that you even see any sort of impact. So for people to be misled or misguided to thinking that even if you start drilling tomorrow, there will be no impact. And I'm not saying it's a right or wrong idea. I just think that people need to understand if they start drilling tomorrow, the cost of gas will not go down anytime soon.
Well, McCain says you got to do all these things. You've got to do nuclear power, you got to do wind, solar, but also offshore drilling, because they all take a while. And so it's not an answer, is it, to say that takes a while, because the other things I mentioned take a while too.
Listen, this thing's not going to be fixed in one day. But I think if you start looking at alternative fuel sources, and if you let people know that this is not going to happen in a day, that my concern is that people are misled into thinking we got to drill tomorrow because our gas is too high, and in the wintertime I want to make sure it doesn't cost as much to fill up my tank, and that's just inaccurate.
Let's go over to the state of Illinois and you. People are starting to think about 2010. I know it's a bit off, but as soon as the November election is over, if you're going to run for governor in 2010, you're going to have to make a decision. Where are you now?
Right now I'm thrilled being state treasurer, and in my free time I try and help my mentor become president of the United States, and I think we've got a tremendous opportunity, and whatever happens, happens.
But it's something you take a look at.
Yeah, and I think, and especially now more than ever, seeing a total lack of leadership with Governor Berkowitz, I think the state is ready for some fresh leadership personally. But we'll see how it plays out. We'll see what happens in November. And I think, there's a lot of time to make those decisions.
No capital plan. Education funding reform hasn't really occurred. Reverend Meeks, as you know, Senator Meeks, very upset about that. Speaker Mike Madigan still at odds with Governor Rod Blagojevich. If you were there, if you were governor, what would you do about that capital plan? What would you do about the education funding reform?
I'd make sure we had a capital plan, and we need to make some structural changes in the state. So, we'll see how that plays out. But we definitely need some new leadership in Illinois.
All right. Thank you so much. Alexei Giannulli, State Treasurer of Illinois.
Thanks.
Does Rod Blagojevich, does he survive this?
I don't know.
He could be indicted. You don't know. He might be.
I don't know.
Would you agree he might be indicted?
No, I don't agree.
You don't think he'll be indicted?
I don't know all the facts. And neither do you.
And if in 2010 he runs for re-election and he runs against Lisa Madigan, who wins?
Rod Berkowitz.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Senate President Emil Jones.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right.
Senator McCain?
Sir.
It sounds like you agree with what Bill Kristol has been saying of the Weekly Standard, that the problem here is Iran for sponsoring Hezbollah, but he also quoted Don Rumsfeld as saying weakness is provocative, suggesting that the United States has been too weak with respect to Iran. Do you agree?
I think that this administration has handled a very difficult situation in regards to Iran as well as we could. The focus up till now has obviously been on Iran's acquisition of nuclear weapons. We have stayed with our European allies and kept them with us as we go to the UN Security Council. We have known, and this administration has known, of Iranians' involvement in southern Iraq and their increasing influence there and problems they've created there. But I'm not sure what else we could have done. Now we obviously have reason to get tougher with Iran. I have said on several occasions it would be a terrible thing for us to have to intervene militarily because of the Iranians acquiring nuclear weapons. There'd be only one thing worse, and that would be Iran acquiring nuclear weapons.
So is it possible that you think, should the United States consider that in the next year, taking military action to avoid facing a nuclear-armed Iran?
I think I can only repeat my previous statement, but I think the President has made it very clear our position on this issue, including his statement that we cannot stand by and watch Israel be destroyed by Iran. And obviously if they develop nuclear weapons, they would certainly have the capability to do that.
Senator, on immigration, one compromise that I think has been suggested between the House and the Senate bills would be to have border control for a year, have that legislation pass, but built into that legislation would be contemplated a more comprehensive path to a more comprehensive bill, which would include guest worker and path to citizenship. Is that something you would sign on to?
That's the outlines of something that's entirely possible, because if tomorrow you said we're going to seal the border and we're going to do whatever is necessary, we are spending billions more now. We're hiring thousands and thousands of new Border Patrol. We've got the National Guard on the border. We're doing lots and lots of things. Even if tomorrow we said we're going to set up a guest worker program, and I won't go into the details of it, it would still take a couple of years. So you could be sealing the border and at the same time moving forward with all of the apparatus and bureaucracy associated with a program like that. So, you know, but on the other hand, if you say you've got to seal the borders, my friend, the Israelis just found out you can't seal a border. It's gonna require, the only thing that's going to keep Israelis safe from having people cross their borders is to stop the threat. The only thing that's going to keep people from coming across our borders is to dry up the magnet, which is what attracts people, which is jobs. And that's why the only way you can work in America would be with a temporary worker visa, tamper-proof visa. Those people who are south of the border would not want to come across illegally, because there would be no job for them while they're here, because any employer who employed them without that document would be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. So it's certainly negotiable in my view.
Can we ask one on tax cuts, because that's something where the two of you differ, I believe. You have not been a fan of the Bush tax cuts. David McSweeney, of course, has.
I voted to make the tax cuts permanent,
so,
because it would have been a tax increase.
Okay, and that's how you'd be running on that position if you ran for president, that the Bush tax cuts were a good idea and you'd keep them.
If I run for president, I will come and talk to you first.
Doing the right thing, no one else wants to.
Here, he's in the convention hall. He has really important things to say, but you're going to have to wait just a bit to hear from him. Our apologies to both you and Brett.
Speaking here on the this is the second day of the Republican National Convention with Julie Brady. She is the deputy co-chair, McCain for president in Illinois. Hi, Julie. How are you doing?
Very good. Very good. Very happy to be here.
Everybody's talking about Sarah Palin. What they're wondering is, does she have the necessary national foreign policy experience to step in should something happen to John McCain? That's the concern. What do you think? How well do you know Sarah Palin, and what do you think about that?
Well, I know that she has a lot of foreign policy experience based on the energy issue. It's obviously a geopolitical issue, so she has to know what's going on in the countries around her. She's from Alaska. She's probably had to deal with Russia. The oil issue impacts the entire world. So I think she probably does have a lot of foreign policy experience based on that one issue.
How much does she help with women across the country, across Illinois?
You know, I think she helps with women a lot, but I think women are not going to vote for her just because she's a woman. They're going to look and see what she's bringing to the ticket. She has fought corruption. She's already done that. She is a reformer, a true reformer in her own state. She has dealt with this energy issue. If you listen to her interviews, she's very up on it, and she's pro-life. So she has a lot to offer. She has a lot to offer John McCain. She seems to me to mirror him in the things that he's interested in doing in the next 4 years.
She is soulmate with John McCain. They're both mavericks. They're both reformers.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know about soulmates, but yeah, they come from two different areas, and they seem to be interested in taking the country in the same way. She saw corruption in Alaska, and she went after it. John McCain sees corruption in Washington, D.C. He goes after it. It doesn't matter what the party is. They don't like to see it in the government.
All right, we're speaking here with Pat Brady. He's the Republican National Committeeman from Illinois. Pat, everybody's asking about Sarah Palin. She's got a lot of executive experience, not a lot, but 2 years as governor of Alaska. Some say more than McCain, more than Obama, more than Joe Biden. None of those guys have executive experience. She's got 2 years. The problem is she ready to step right in day one should something happen to John McCain, because people say she doesn't have any national foreign policy experience. What do you say to that?
That our candidate, the number 2 on our ticket, has more experience than the number 1 on their ticket. She's been an executive. She's been commander of the National Guard in Alaska. She's been to Kuwait. She understands these issues. She's certainly more qualified than the Democrat candidate.
Illinois delegation, how charged up are they for Sarah Palin?
Very excited. Just walking around talking to people the last couple of days. We've seen the fundraising numbers since she came on the ticket. We raised $6.85 million in one day, her first day on the ticket, $10 million in the last 2 days.
What is it? Is there pro-life views? Is it her family? What is it? Apparently the Republican base, social conservatives, are very excited about Sarah Palin. Why?
Well, I think the fiscal conservatives are also excited about her because and she's a reformer. So now we have 2 reformers. We're going to have true change in Washington, and people are excited about that. You compare that to what the Democrats have done. You've got Barack Obama, who very inexperienced, and Joe Biden, 35 years in Washington. So the true reform ticket time this cycle is the Republicans.
Yeah, and as somebody who's been in Illinois all this time, still teaching at the University of Illinois, you know Barack Obama, and think, as I recall, you had him as a guest speaker in one of your classes there. Appears to be somebody you would know, like, respect. Still, when you match him up against, and apparently you think there are a lot of strengths to Barack Obama, match him up to McCain. Is it just the commander-in-chief issue, or are there other issues that, in your mind, differentiate John McCain from Barack Obama?
Well, I think I have a great deal of respect for Barack Obama. Again, he's a young man who's come very far, very fast, just as Sarah Palin has done. But again, I go back to me, the key to this race, the key to the president is commander-in-chief. And with John McCain and Barack Obama, I just think that John McCain clearly is the one best prepared to step in and be commander-in-chief. Someday maybe Barack Obama might be the best candidate, but in this election against John McCain, John McCain's the best candidate. And so I really don't have to kind of worry about some of these other issues or think that, you know, do I agree with John McCain on all these, or do I agree with Barack Obama more? The number one issue to me is commander-in-chief, and to me it's clear that the choice is John McCain.
Would you say that Barack Obama is not ready to be president, not ready to be commander-in-chief?
I'm not saying he's not ready. I just said he's not as ready as John McCain is. And again, I think we're fortunate. I know both of them. I like both of them. I think they're both decent people. And you look at that, so what's the difference? I think it's John McCain, I think, is more ready. He's more experienced than Senator Obama. And to me, again, it's a pretty clear your choice on Election Day.
Recently, there's been that love fest between Speaker Mike Madigan and Rod and Bobby Rush and Jesse Jackson. But is it real, or is it just, PR?
I think it's all physical. I don't think it's real.
All right. Thank you so much. Former Governor Jim Edgar, thank you so much for taking time to speak with us. How do the voters sort through this? They're going to see, as you know, hundreds of $millions perhaps of ads. They're going to see debates that people say are pretty important, 3 with the presidential side and 1 on the vice presidential side. They're going to see C-SPAN.
They will. Let me tell you, though, the debates are important, the ads are important, but it's all for a very narrow percent of the electorate. You figure that 30 to 35% of the electorate, they've already made up their minds. Same for the Democrats or the Republicans. So really what this campaign about is that all-important center. And that's what John McCain and Barack Obama will be doing over the next 8.5 weeks. The debates, the impressions that will come out of the debates will be very important. Maybe more so for Barack Obama, because people still are getting to know him. People have seen John McCain on the national stage for the last 20 to 25 years. But the other issues like taxes, which will, energize a certain sector of the electorate, or the social issues that will energize a certain sector of the electorate, those issues are important. But at the end of the day, the swing voter will decide who can they envision as commander-in-chief. Who do they want? Who do they like? Who do they trust? And it's going to be that gut check, I think, that will really determine in many respects whether the Democrats or the Republicans win.
How many of those voters are? It sounded like you put out the math of 35% on one side, 35% the other.
It's about 20 to 25% of the electorate. I mean, these are the so-called, the Clinton Republicans, the Reagan Democrats, the people who might have voted for George Bush in 2000, but may have thought about voting for John Kerry in 2004. They're the voters that really don't align themselves to a political party, but they really view where they see the country and where they want the country to go. The reason why Bill Clinton won in 1992 is people wanted change, and he pretty much epitomized the change that they wanted.